Hi, I'm Mike Steven, and this is Gear Up. Today we're going to talk about slack country, something that has definitely come onto the radar of most ski folk and snowboard folk in the last couple years. What's happened and what's changed is that a lot of the big companies have gotten into the alpine touring world, and they've made a product that is definitely able to ski on the mountain for lift access, but it's also light enough and functional enough to be able to do some slack country, meaning either skinning up your local ski hill in the evening and making a lap, or going into some of the mellower backcountry areas. A lot of this product isn't really designed for your like 7-day traverses or stuff like that. You're going to want to go to very much so backcountry specific stuff for that. But this product covers those other two bases really quite well. So first, seeing as it's up first, we'll talk about the boots and what's changed in the boots. So you're going to see a theme here. Overall, everything's gone on a diet. Everything is lighter weight. So for an alpine boot to be this light is really, really quite impressive. They roughly have dropped about 1/3 of their weight, which is pretty impressive, just due to lightweight buckles, lightweight liner, different kind of plastic that they're using. So they've really been able to pull a lot of weight out of the boot. The other thing that they've been able to do that I love about alpine companies joining the game is that the boots are much more downhill friendly, meaning that when you're skiing down, you're not sacrificing, you're not skiing a wimpy boot or a soft boot coming down. You can ski a real boot coming down and ski fast, aggressive, ski aggressive terrain, all that kind of good stuff. The next thing that's happened with boots in the alpine world is tech toes and heels. We're going to go into that a little deeper when we talk about bindings, but tech is basically allows you access to another type of binding that is much more efficient in the backcountry. Some of the other technology that's kind of neat in here is custom molding shells. So the shell of this boot can actually be custom molded to the width of your foot. So not only is the liner custom moldable, but the shell is also custom moldable. So the ski boots have come a long way. In the back of the boot, probably the most important feature, you have a flick there, and when you flick that mechanism there, it's called the Sherlock mechanism on this one, but when you flick that, it allows the boot to walk, or the cuff to go vertical. So if you see, you've got now movement in the cuff. So this allows you to walk quite normally for your way up. You flip it over, push in, it locks into place, and now you're stuck in that steeper angle of attack to be able to come down. So that's kind of boots in a nutshell. We'll do skis next because skis is really simple. For the most part, people are just using the skis that they use on the mountain. Here in the East and West Kootenays, people are using usually in around 100 mils in the waist skis, so something that's like an all-mountain ski that's 100 mils in the waist. Any of those types of skis are great to mount a touring binding onto. You're going to have lots of fun on the mountain and in the backcountry on something like that. This is a little bit wider. This is 116 in the waist. This is definitely one that has pulled a lot of weight out. For something this wide, the ski is exceptionally light. So again, carrying that weight savings diet, you're going to notice that in the all-mountain skis from all the alpine companies, they've really worked on reducing the weight of those skis, and they successfully have brought them down. The next piece of the puzzle is the binding, and probably the most technical piece. So I call this the gateway into the backcountry, and this will allow you to use any ski boot in the binding, so any alpine boot, even if it doesn't have a walk mode, and it doesn't, if your boot doesn't have pins, you can still mount a binding like this on. How this binding works is the boot obviously goes into the binding. For skiing down, it's just a regular ski binding. But for going up, you release this back piece right here, and then all of a sudden, the heel can raise. You can walk to the top of the mountain. You've got two different climbing heights there, and your valley bottom there, and then lock it in place to go back down. This is a fully DIN certified binding, meaning the din is the release value at which the ski comes off. This has the same testing that a regular alpine binding would have. So this is called a frame binding. Various companies make it. The negative of a frame binding is that it's quite heavy. And why it's heavy is twofold. One, it's heavier just because it has the bar in the middle and it's just a bigger, beefier binding. Secondly, it's all about static and dynamic weight. Static weight is something that stays still. This isn't staying still. This is moving. It's dynamic weight. So when you lift this binding 400 times or 1,000 times on the top, on your way to the top of the mountain, you're lifting the entire binding every time. Tech bindings, if you remember, I talked about those kind of funky little toe pins that the boots had and the ability to use a different binding. Tech bindings are able to get rid of this whole frame from moving. We'll talk about that a little bit further in a second. The big benefit of this binding is price. It gets you out there. You don't have to buy a specific boot. You can use your boot. It gets you out there at a fairly reasonable price. That and a pair of skins, and you've got the basics to go do some slack country on a ski hill or somewhere where there's no avalanche risk. So next we're going to talk about pin bindings. Pin bindings like this one have been out for quite some time. And the whole idea behind a pin binding is that these are the pins, and the pins hook into the boot and allow just the boot to pivot in the walk mode. So you're not lifting an entire binding every step you take. The comparison I use on it that makes a lot of sense to people is that if you were to take 10 pounds and throw it in your backpack and climb to the top of Fisher Peak, yeah, you'd be tired. But if you used to take that same 10 pounds and put 5 pounds on each one of your feet, you'd be exhausted by the time you hit the top. It's the exact same amount of weight. One is dynamic in your back and one is static in your back and one is dynamic on your feet. So you'll be much more exhausted. That's why people doing weight training will attach weights to their body to push themselves even harder. Okay, so with the pin binding, with this style of pin binding, it's much more of like a backcountry orientated pin binding. This is what we've had for a long time. It's extremely lightweight. It pivots off the toe. It is non-DIN certified. So it's not certified to the same degree that an alpine binding would be. It has its forward release and a lateral and horizontal release technically, all in the heel of the binding. The toe will release when tugged hard enough, but it doesn't have a release value. So the DIN is in the toe is all in the heel here, your lateral and vertical. So what's changed when the big guys came to the market? When the big guys came into the marketplace, they wanted to make things that could ski on the ski hill just as well as they skied in the backcountry. And some of the things that they've done to do that is this binding here. This binding is kind of one of the ones that is definitely leading the charge. With this binding, it looks like a regular alpine binding in terms of that you just put your toe in and stomp in to get in. So when you're in downhill mode, it's just toe in, stomp down, and away you go. When you need to switch it into touring mode, it's quite simple actually. You just take this piece right here, flip that down, and now you're gonna see the pins have come out. So now you basically just put your pins into your boot, lock them into place, and the first time I'm just gonna flip this down, that's in ski mode. The first time you step down on this, it locks your brake up out of the way, and now you're touring up the mountain. If you need to use the heel raiser, you can just reach down. Whoops, I did the backwards thing. We'll redo that. Reach down, and there's your heel raiser right there. So you can just raise the heel raiser for climbing steeper terrain, flatten it down for valley bottom. And again, to switch it back into ski mode is quite simple. You just flip that guy, take this, flip this up, and now you're back into a regular alpine binding. The neat thing about this is that this binding can be pushed just as hard as any alpine binding on the ski hill. So it's a really strong, robust binding. Whereas when you look at some of the other tech bindings, I don't know if I'd push them too hard on the ski hill. Whereas this one, you can push it pretty darn hard on the ski hill. But when it comes time to tour, it's quite efficient because you're actually using a pin setup. So that's a game changer for the slack country people, actually having something that's a little bit lighter weight and having something that is pin compatible. And what's allowed that is bindings like this and the Alpine boots now coming with those pins. And I'll just show you one more time. So the pins that I was talking about, that's your tech toes or pins right there. And that's the heel mechanism. The binding that I just showed you doesn't use this piece, but it does use this. And I'll just show you real quickly how it goes in there. Basically put it into tour mode and you're in. And away you go, you're touring up the mountain. So you can see it's gonna be a lot lighter just lifting this new lightweight boot as opposed to lifting your boot plus the frame of the binding. So those are bindings in a nutshell. They've basically just allowed you to use one binding to ski aggressively on the mountain, but then take it off into the backcountry and play there too. So it's a kind of a neat option that you can add into your ski gear if you're like, well, every once in a while somebody invites me into the backcountry or invites me to go for a skin up a ski hill. Really, if you've got this kind of setup, it costs a little bit more in the beginning, but you've got a setup that can do two things, that can backcountry tour and ski on the mountain. The last piece of the equation that you need, or the second to last piece, it is the last piece you need. The last piece I'll show you isn't a need, it's a want. This is the skin. So skin material is designed to go onto the bottom of the ski. So skins just fit onto the bottom of your ski. And the things that you need to know about skins when you're purchasing them is how tall your ski is and how wide it is at the widest point. That will be up near the tip of the ski. Then you trim the skin to fit your ski. And what you've got is you put the skin on, and it's kind of like Velcro for climbing the hill. Turns your ski into almost a snowshoe that allows you to grip while climbing in your climbing mode. When you get to the top, you just take it off, toss it into your backpack, switch over your binding, and you get to ski down. So skins allow you to basically walk up the mountain. That's the piece of the equation that makes this ski not slip backwards and allows you to climb up the mountain. The last piece that's really nice is a pole. And I don't know where I put it. Here it is. So, this is a height adjustable pole. And the benefit of a height adjustable pole is that when you're climbing up, if you're doing switchbacks, it's nice to be able to adjust your pole's length for deep snow. For when you're doing a switchback, one pole is going to be up high like this and one pole is going to be low because you're reaching down the mountain. This one's up high on the snow. So you can actually set one pole low, one pole high, and then on your switchbacks you just trade hands and you can head up the mountain that way. So it just makes it a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more stable. Most of the backcountry poles now, some of the features that make them unique are that they're going to have grip material lower down. So if you don't feel like lowering it just for one turn or one this or one that, you can just drop your hand down. You still have a grippy material versus just aluminum or carbon. The other thing that makes a backcountry or a slack country pole is something with a little bit bigger basket. You're going to want a little bit bigger basket when you're in deeper snow. It's not that you have to, it's just that it makes it a little bit nicer. The next piece of the equation is the handles here have unique shapes. Well, those unique shapes are actually designed to work as a tool. So reaching down to adjust your binding or make an adjustment on your binding is if you have to reach all the way down, that's not so much fun if you have to do that 10 times during a climb. So you just flip your pole upside down, you can grab a hold of a heel raiser, flick it up into position, and now you've got your heel raiser. Vice versa, you can use the tool to put it down and get it out of the way. So backcountry poles are adjustable in terms of height. Backcountry poles have adjustment in the grip these days, bigger basket, and usually a tool up at the end or a good chunk of plastic reaching out to be able to use as a tool. Those are the basics that you need to go slack country. I'm just going to put this in as a quick little note. If you're going backcountry anywhere where there's avalanche, you do need your safety equipment and you also need some knowledge. Definitely be safe out there. If you're up on the resort, make sure that you've checked it with the resort that it's okay. They usually have a run that you're allowed to go up kind of deal, that you're allowed to skin up. So just check your local hill for the regulations on that. But slack country is a lot of fun. It's very low risk, and you get a good workout on the way up and you get a bonus run on the way down. So that is kind of wrapping up slack country gear. If you have any questions, pop down to your local shop. I'm sure they'll be happy to answer your questions. Thanks for watching. I'm Mike Stephen. Hi, I'm Mike Stephen and this is Gear Up. Today we're going to talk about waxing, what product you should wax and why you might wax. Well, first off, any of your winter product like cross-country skis, snowboards, alpine skis, they all use the same glide wax. So glide wax is what makes you slide efficiently down the mountain, or when you're cross-country skiing, slide efficiently through the meadow. A lot of people think that it's all about speed, but it's more about efficiency than speed. Meaning that if you wax your cross-country skis more often, maybe you'll get to do 10 kilometers instead of 7 kilometers. Or when you're on your snowboard, maybe you won't have to unstrap and push out from that flat area. You'll be able to carry your momentum because of your wax across a flat area. So pretty much any winter product that we're talking about here, it's beneficial for it to be waxed, and waxed fairly frequently. People ask us how often should we wax things, and we ask them a question directly back of how efficient or how fast would you like your board or skis to be. What we're going to talk about here today is just how to wax your own gear, because really you don't need a lot of tooling, and it's really quite easy to do. So the things that you will need are a few basic things. So you're going to need your wax first off. Wax can either be in temperature ranges or you can have universal waxes. So you can have a universal warm, a universal cold, or you can get real specific into your temperatures. Realistically, unless you're competing, you probably don't have to get super accurate into your temperatures. For example, this wax here is designed for a temperature of -10 to -18. And the iron should be set to 150 degrees Celsius. So that's important. Both those things are important. One, your wax will work optimally in that temperature range of the snow temperature. It's not actually air temperature, it's snow temperature. So you use a thermometer in snow if you want to get real accurate. But, and then the 150 degrees on your iron is so that you don't overcook the wax or undercook the wax. If you undercook the wax, you won't get the additives into the base. If you overcook it, the iron will begin to smoke, and that means that you're burning the additives out of the wax. Next up, you'll need an iron. This is my iron here, very similar to an iron in a box there. It's probably the most expensive piece of the equipment, but you can probably get the whole kit for, I don't know, probably around 100, 150 bucks, something like that. And you can get a whole kit to wax. So iron, and one of the important things to note on an iron is that this iron has temperature on it. So it actually has a digital temperature, or some have analog temperatures. People ask, well, can I use my iron for like my clothing? Well, the problem is you don't know what temperature cotton is, for example, or what temperature rayon is, because your iron isn't going to have temperature settings. So it's pretty hard to wax to a specific temperature when you have a regular clothing iron. So that's your iron, probably the most expensive piece of the equipment, but nothing scary. So the next piece of equipment I'm going to grab is going to be your scraper. So a scraper is simply to scrape the wax off after you've applied it, let it cool, then you scrape the wax off. Basically a piece of plexiglass. This one's 4 millimeters thick. The different thicknesses are for being able to flex the scraper and the different amounts of support. So how soft you want the scraper to be in terms of flexing it, and the reason why you'd flex it. For example, on a snowboard, these corners will dig in if you don't flex your scraper. And you don't want the corners to dig into the base and cause irregularities. So you slightly flex it, which creates a bow so that your corners are raised slightly. That way you won't dig in. On an alpine ski or cross-country ski, alpine ski we'll talk about first. Alpine ski, you've got your edges going from side to side, so you're really going to be well supported there, and you're not going to have a problem with digging into the base. Cross-country skis, you've got to be very careful. There's no edge, so it's just base material. So when you're dragging it across there, you want to focus on being nice and level, having a little bit of flex on it, but that's about it. So that's your scraper. The last piece of the equation on a simple wax job is a brush. And brushes remove the last bit of wax. So here we've put a bunch of wax into the ski, then we scraped it off, and now we're going to brush it off even further. People a lot of times ask, well, why would you do that? The wax that's on the surface of the ski actually doesn't help. It's the wax that's absorbed into the base that gives you your efficiency. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to get all that excess wax that's going to create drag actually out of the ski. Wax or base material has, if you picture it, little canoes. They're microscopic little canoes. And when you're brushing the wax out, you can move both ways, or you should move both ways. Because they're a canoe, you've got to get the wax out of the tip and out of the tail. So when you're brushing, you brush both directions, and you're brushing to basically make or clean all the wax out of those pores for a final buffing on a simple waxing. So I'm going to show you a quick little demo on a few things. One thing that's nice to have is, I've got it here somewhere, is an elastic band. When you're doing alpine skis, to get the brake out of the way, so you just kind of put the elastic band on, wrap it around, and it holds the brake out of the way. That way it doesn't get in the way when you're waxing, scraping, any of the processes that you're going to be doing. So first off, we're going to take the waxing iron and the wax, and you're going to take it and put the wax onto it, and you're going to see that I'm dripping a nice drip, a nice layer of wax all the way down the ski. Once you've got a drip line all the way down the ski, then you start ironing the wax in. One of the most important things is to keep the wax, or to keep the iron moving at all times. So from tip to tail, you don't have to work a certain zone. You can work tip to tail, you can work zone by zone if you want. I like to work tip to tail. Sometimes I'll work a zone just to get some excess wax that isn't melting into the base. People ask, how long should I wax for, or how long should I put the heat to the base? Well, probably the easiest way to do it is one of two answers for that. One is that when you're moving at about this speed right here, that the wax is still wet at the opposite end of the ski when you get the iron to the other end, so that you still see that the wax is wet. Another way is to feel through the ski or the snowboard, and you'll actually be able to feel the heat starting to come through the top sheet. You don't want it to get hot, you just want it to be warm. And you're also looking for that temperature at the tip or the tail where the ski is slightly thinner. You don't want to be feeling underneath in the middle. So once you've got that wax kind of put into the ski, you're going to let it cool. You're going to let the wax cool for, it's probably going to take 5 to 10 minutes for it to cool enough to begin scraping. You do want to let the wax fully solidify or fully harden before you scrape. It can be a little bit on the soft side, but definitely not liquid. Now that we've let the ski cool, it's time to scrape. So you take your scraper, flex it slightly, and start working down the ski. You're gonna see that you're scraping off quite a bit of wax. You're also gonna see that in the wax here, see the way there's a little bit of black in there? That's base material, so that sometimes you've got a little bit of base high. That's fine to be coming off. You just don't want chunks of base material coming out, so gouging it with the corner. So you continue to work the ski and pull the wax off. It's not that important to be ultra smooth here. It doesn't have to be perfect. That's what your brush is going to do for you. So your brush is going to make the base look uniform, and what you're looking for in a ski or a board or anything like that is you're looking for like a nice black glossy base. So you want it to look really quite glossy. You don't want any white kind of or gray kind of hair, it almost looks like, that comes through the base. And you don't want it to feel dry to the touch. You want it to feel kind of smooth and silky to the touch. So once you're finished scraping, it's now time to brush the ski. So you take your brush, the brush that I showed originally, you're probably best to get a copper nylon mix. It's called a combination brush. And the copper will pull a little bit more of the wax out of the deep pore, and then the nylon kind of polishes it a little bit. So I've just got a copper brush here, and it'll be fine for this purpose. So you're just kind of working back and forth like this on the ski, all the way up and down the ski, tip to tail. And what you're going to start to see is you're going to start to see that the grooves in the ski, or the texture in the ski, is going to start to come out in the ski. So as we kind of work that back and forth, it cleans up. The last thing that I usually do is I just wipe it down with a piece of paper towel. And now this is an old beat up ski. This is one of our test skis for practicing on. But you can see that the base is actually really black and silky, even on doing a quick wax job like that. So again, waxing to sum things up is you can do it on your snowboard, your alpine skis, or your cross-country skis. Glide wax is glide wax. It's the same for all of them. So the more often you do it, the better you're going to glide and enjoy yourself potentially more out there. Thanks for watching Gear Up. Have a fantastic day.